What's good? I'm here to share how self improvement has changed my life. Um, I grew up with both parents in my household, essentially. I'm gonna get straight into it. My name is Gadak Richard. I'm from Calgary, Canada, Alberta, and I'm just gonna share how self improvement changed my life. So, yeah, I grew up in a solid household, in a solid family. I had separated parents though. My biological dad wasn't fully necessarily in my life. I was kind of like going to his house on weekends type kind of deal. I seen him kind of argue a little bit, but that didn't necessarily have much of an impact on my life. And I was a really social kid. I was a chubby little kid, funny class clown, and I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of bikes on my lawn. I don't know if you've seen those memes, like there's bikes all over the damn lawn. I had so many bikes on my lawn. Going to the parks, going to 7-Eleven. Just I had so many friends. But that is in those years I did discover pornography, and that's when everything kicked off and my addiction to pornography started. It's because somebody in my family used to draw, and they drew explicit images from magazines just to express their art, and I seen a couple of them like, whoa, it was really stimulating. Obviously, and I was obviously always a curious kid, and yeah, so that pornography addiction started just based off magazines, and it went to my iPod that I got from my family members like for Christmas and stuff like that, and that didn't really have much of an impact on me until later on, and we'll kind of get to that later. And then that was it was just fun. It was stimulating. Like I obviously didn't know shit about it or what it would do to me, right? But besides that, I was always into music too. Even before years before that time, I was rapping with my older cousin, playing the drums, playing the violin. I've always been into music, and God was a big part of my life as well. And I went to a Christian school, but I'd kind of resented school my whole life too. Since third grade, I was like, bro, this is so useless. I'm not gonna use any of it. When I left the building feeling the exact same way, I realized like it didn't make sense to me. It never really clicked. I was just kind of a degenerate in school. I used to like just do. There was like cubbies for the desk. It was literally like setting us up for a freaking 9 to 5. There was like cubbies for the desk, and I went to the corner one, had my own separate wall, brought my iPad to the school, and just played with cars and tech decks and the goddamn thing. Like nothing really mattered, bro. I didn't give a shit. Okay, I ran in the halls and I got grabbed by teachers, and teachers like I was just a bad kid, and that kind of carried out and kind of developed a lot of anger issues in my life. And I don't know if that really stemmed from me not having my dad in my life, like my biological dad, but I did have a stepfather, and he raised me, and he is definitely a man I look up to this day, and I always will. But besides the point, I had a lot of anger issues, coming from like grade 3 to grade 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10. Okay, all the way up my whole school years, I was getting angry at teachers. I was throwing chairs in classrooms and swearing, saying, "I'll see you in hell, bitch," to all the teachers, just swearing, flipping desks. And I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I was just copying the other kids, or I was just doing it for a little bit of attention because I didn't necessarily really get any. Like I was a first child. Um, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Like I feel like I was loved by my parents a lot, but I was just a pissed off kid. Okay, except for grade 5, yo. Grade 5, I had a crush on a girl in that class. I'm not gonna disclose any names. I had a crush on 2 of them, so I was actually a good kid, and I had a crush on a teacher, so I was actually the best student there. And yeah, that kind of continued on. And then throughout the summer of my last year, 6th grade, in that school, where I had a lot of anger issues, I ended up moving houses, and that area and that neighborhood held a lot of memories to me. Like just obviously, like I said, I was really social. I had a lot of friends with bikes on my lawn everywhere, and having to move from that area caused a lot of um, it was like my first detachment. Moving as a kid, like I got like really sad. I started freaking crying. Even my older sister, we were just sad. It was freaking, just the first. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just tough. But we ended up moving to a way better house and ended up making a lot more friends. It was just my first attachment as a kid, and I took it really hard. But yeah, and I had a love for like a lot of different passions. Like I said, I did music, and I ended up picking up skateboarding. I was like, "Bro, I'm gonna be a professional skateboarder. I'm gonna do all of this, man." And I had a lot of just passion with everything. I was just so aggressive with everything. Even my mom noticed that when I was a kid as well. She would always like kind of just tell me things like, "You're special, da da da, you're so smart," and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of just led me to have a lot of confidence in my life, and it gave me the ability to dream. And throughout that same house, when I moved, the house that I moved from, my parents were pursuing some entrepreneurial endeavors, revolving around some different MLM structures, and I'll kind of get into how I ended up getting to that too later down the road. But yeah, that really changed their mindset because it wasn't really negative. It wasn't negative at all, honestly. They they grew their mindset crazy, and it poured onto me, and it made me the man who I am today. And just being able to have a dream and have a vision and be able to actually pursue something that's worthwhile, and that's really how I grew up. I didn't come from the ghetto. I wasn't broke. There was always food on the table, things like that. But like being able to kind of see where there is a financial struggle, because obviously they were just like kind of living paycheck to paycheck, not really, maybe saving a little bit extra, but the mindset was everything. The mindset was everything, and having the dream, right? And that just changes me. But always being in social circles with my family, it was always talk of finances, but the talk of finances were never. It was always the talk of money, like lack thereof, never like the future acquiring of the finances, and that's what I feel like holds a lot of people back in society, 100%. But besides the point, I was just motivated to be the one that gets rich, the one that does this, the one that does that. And I still may not end up being that person, but as long as I'm pursuing something while the years are going by, I feel like that's the only thing that's worth it. I feel like that's the only thing that really matters, right? But yeah, and throughout those years, moving to my next house, I ended up, it was junior high. Tried to kind of like fit in a little bit. I was still skateboarding. I was just like a weird, chubby little black kid. But I met some of the realest niggas that I have. Well, one of them. The rest I don't really talk to that much. And I started kind of experiencing the negative effects of pornography, and just normal little kid stuff. But like, being scared to talk to girls. I think that's a normal thing. That could not be porn. That's just, you don't really have much value to add to women. Therefore, you're scared to talk to them. But I was really indulging in it a lot, and I just look in hindsight, maybe that's why, because if I was home alone, and if I was home alone and no one's there, you already know what I'm doing. You already know what I'm doing. Like, that website's getting pulled up multiple times, bro. And I was ashamed of it too, because I've almost got caught. I'm trying to hide it. So obviously, if you're trying to hide something that you're doing, why are you doing it? Like, if I were to be walked in while doing a YouTube video, and I tried to hide the fact of me doing a YouTube video, am I really passionate about this? Do I really love what I'm doing? That's kind of my mindset around certain things. But yeah, that's when I realized porn was kind of taking over my life, just based off my addiction levels were kind of rising and rising and rising and rising. And this kind of period in my life, I started watching anime too. Chidori type stuff. I was just obsessed with anime, pornography. Just a little kid, honestly. And at this point, I didn't see any damage really. It was still just like pleasure, instant pleasures, mindless scrolling. This is kind of when Snapchat came out and everything too. Started streaks with people. I started posting weird ass shits to get attention and get responses, to get those dopamine rushes of notifications. Like, I post a picture, and I hide a basketball in the image, and I said, screenshot and send a picture if you can find the basketball. Like, if you realize what really was behind that, it was actually, sorry, 1 second. What really was behind that was trying to get attention, trying to get notifications. But besides that, then I started picking up basketball too. I ended up trying out for the grade 8 basketball team, and I made it. Like, this is the first time I actually I made the team, but I was a practice warrior. And again, this might be where more effects of pornography come in. I didn't have the confidence to perform around people, but when practice came in, it was my friends in the competitive arena. I was able to thrive, bro. I was doing layups, dribbling between all of them. But when game time came and there's an audience and there's people watching and the girls basketball team watching, I couldn't put the ball between my legs. I just couldn't do it, man. But I went crazy and I did wrestling too in grade 8 too. I realized I did wrestling. I was pretty good. I was stronger than the average kid. Like, there was one kid from the other schools that all the parents knew. They're like, I went to a tournament. All the parents knew that kid. They're like, yo, this kid's the strongest. And then I verse him, and that kid's struggling. You're like, whoa. They're talking to my mom. They're like, yo, that kid is so strong. And all these little things kind of adding up. Obviously, my mom praising everyone calls their kids smart and special and whatever. But those kind of things from the external point of view, me, picking up things really fast, learning how to play basketball, making the team, skateboarding, having all these kind of just like above average skills and certain traits was kind of a turning point in my mindset shift of being able to like explore. I don't really know. They're being able to actually do something with my life or do something with my time and have a purpose, right? But after all that, summer came around. Of course, you already know me. I'm every single night, open up Pornhub, eating my Frosted Flakes, noodles on a daily basis, 2, 3, the instant noodles, instead of just one, not 2. Sometimes I have 3 in a bowl. Turn on Netflix and over and over again. And there's even one time I was using a sex toy as a kid. In in ninth grade or 8th grade or 10th grade, early 10th grade. I don't know what it was. Think about that, bro. That's deep, G. That's deep. We can go later deep into that for another time. But yeah, I ended up moving schools, and I got around kind of the wrong crowd. I started smoking marijuana more than I should have. My first time smoking weed was in 6th grade, but I got around the wrong crowd, and I started smoking weed, and I started attaching myself to a group of friends that didn't even really want me there. And this was, I don't know what it was. I was a chubby little fat kid. I didn't really have much friends. Moving to a new school, you're kind of vulnerable in kind of your association. So I just started hanging out with them. I started smoking weed, inviting myself to freaking like their little, they called it a trap house. So they'll go there and they'll smoke weed. And now I realize now that these kids were just spoiled little brats that just had nothing else better to do except for disobey their parents. And I was always nice to my parents. I was always an obedient kid. I did what I needed to do other than school. Like, school was my weak point, and in performing in that area, but I would perform everywhere else. I'd come home, I'd play the drums. That didn't last too long, but I was always doing more shit, right? And I was playing a lot of video games, a lot of Fortnite, a lot of Call of Duty, and I would grind those things. I wanted to go professional and all those type of things, and it was, I guess, what a normal kid does, essentially, but I was grinding a little bit harder, and you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I started smoking weed, watching pornography, watching Netflix, and all this overstimulation just drains my confidence, drains my life, drains my physique. And I was getting chubbier and chubbier and fatter by literally the month, like going from 9th grade to 10th grade. And then in the middle of the 9th grade summer, though, I ended up hitting the gym with my friend Luis. I don't mean to say names, so he may never see this video. But he outdid me. I mean, his motivation was probably way stronger, and he was kind of bigger than me, to be honest. And he ended up losing a lot of weight. And he got more results faster, and then that kind of created my first little revolution of competition. But I never really acted on it until way later in my life. Grade 10 rolls around, and half of it's a good year, half of it's a bad year. The first year, the first half of the year, bro, it was amazing. I was still the fat, happy class clown that everybody loved. It was nice. But keep in mind this. I remember how I told you my biological dad wasn't really much in my life. And leading up to this moment, like I was around, I wasn't around, like I was in and out. But that grade 9 summer leading up to grade 10, I figured out my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And yeah, I just want you to keep that in mind. But yeah, in the beginning of the year, it was cool. I was nervous but excited to start high school. And nothing really was like crazy. I was just the fat, chubby kid. But again, I did realize my addiction for pornography and everything else was rising, and it was normalized too, because this is when Instagram was at its all-time high. They were always kind of going through updates with colors, and I think they were testing a whole bunch of stuff that makes people more addicted to the app. But yeah, I was really into that, and it was really normalized. No Nut November, like it was all my friends just watching porn, like always talking about porn stars, etc., etc. Like it was a normalized thing, and I just kept indulging. And throughout the year, I was just kind of going through, still had that same mindset of school. Like, I performed okay. My teachers kind of noticed that I had a lot of potential. I was really smart. I was really intellectual, but I knew that it wasn't necessarily worth my time in school. And I said that to all of them. They're like, no, it's okay. You need to get your diploma. Da, da, da. My teachers, even in grade 8, told me, you're just going to be counting pennies in grade 10 if you keep this mindset. And they were kind of right, based on the classes I was in. I wasn't in the high-performing classes. But it's okay, man. Like, fuck school. It's not really needed, bro. If you have a bigger vision in school, do it, man. If you have a feeling that this is not really for you, and you can actually see yourself doing something else, I say you do it. It's why waste time in something? Why work hard at something that's not worthwhile? And then throughout those years, I ended up having a girl best friend. I was the best friend. I fell in love with her, and she was never gonna act on anything. Ever with me. I was a chubby little fat kid that just gave her that attention, gave her that validation. I was always calling people beautiful, texting girls good morning, gorgeous, have a blessed day. Like, that's the kind of kid I was. I was blue-pilled. I was fucking blue-pilled, so they call it. I was just a simp. That's all it is. I fell in love with her. She wasn't really doing anything with me. She never was. And after those kind of years of me cutting her off, it kind of led into the darkest times of my life. But I'm going to cut this video short right now. I'll talk to you guys later. Stay tuned for part 2.